The 2030 Agenda main contributions are as follows. First, a new approach to development, which is completely different from the Millennium Development Goals era. While they are still focused on many of the issues tackled by the Millennium Development Goals, like fighting poverty or addressing issues related to education or health or gender, they are adding new dimensions. First, the universality. So the agenda is not just about development in the low income or middle income countries, but basically a universal agenda for all that covers all countries, south, north, west, east, low income, high income. The other thing is basically about the quality dimension. So the MDGs were very much focused on some numbers and some specific targets which have been very useful, and we are continuing with them. But for instance, in the education side, in addition to making sure that those who are at the age of enrollment in schools are enrolled, but there is an additional dimension related to the quality of education that needs to be considered. And again, on matters related to health or issues related to access to services at large. So it's not just about the numbers, but the numbers in addition to the quality. The third aspect of this agenda is the integrated approach or the interconnectedness between the different goals and targets. So when you are considering aspects related to education, you may need to consider as well areas related to development in infrastructure, in access to energy, in access to water, in gender aspects, on the education of the parents, and henceforth. So this is providing a kind of simple, common sense approach, but it was ignored in the past. The fourth thing that this agenda is bringing is the consideration of resources in earlier stage compared to the MDGs era. You may recall that when we considered in the past the Millennium Development Goals, 2 years after the launching of the Millennium Development Goals, there had been some consideration of how to finance them under the Monterey Convention and arrangements. Now, the start was early with the consideration of finance, and you may have realized that the summit to consider aspects related to finance took place few months before the blessings of the SDGs. Took place in Addis in July before the blessings of the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda in September in New York. The other thing, and there are many other aspects, but I like to emphasize that as well, is taking that kind of useful attention to good data and good evidence, because you cannot really formulate policies or reform the institutions or make anybody accountable to what they have been promised without good data sets and good information. Yeah, this is a very important issue, how the World Bank Group is going to support different countries and the global system to maintain and achieve better quality of data to guide the policy making and to inform the public on the progress. So we are realizing, like others, that there have been a great deal of a problem when we are dealing with data. So if the MDGs, the first one of them was basically about fighting poverty, and the SDGs, the first one of them is about fighting poverty, and our twin goals in the bank, the first of the twin goals is about eradication or ending extreme poverty by 2030. In that very goal, you will be seeing that something like 57 countries who don't really have good or adequate information about what they are doing, simply because they didn't collect the data required. 57 countries are either with one observation or no observation at all as far as the development on poverty and the profiles of poverty are concerned. So at the bank, we're not stopping just at complaining and saying that we have data gaps. We have started with partnerships, one with the UN system and the multilateral development banks, We signed a memorandum of understanding back in 2013 in preparation for the implementation of the 2030 agenda to enhance our collaboration in providing technical and financial assistance to the countries. Second, we are engaged in different initiatives with different partners, including UN foundations, on areas related to the global initiative related to the Sustainable Development Goals and we're part of this good initiative that involves using technology, providing technical support to the statistical authorities, institutional reforms, dealing as well with aspects related to laws. If some countries are in need for improving the legal frameworks, we can provide help as well on that. And we put good investments, good money on that. The estimate, the cost is going to be around $300 million for a number of countries. Close to 80 countries are going to be benefiting from this initiative to help them conducting household surveys, which are essential to obtain any kind of meaningful data on consumption, on aspects related to poverty and inequality as well. In addition to that, we are partnering as well with the private sector. It is not just governments and the multilateral development banks and the UN system. The private sector today, through the advances we realize in technology, in the big data systems that some of them obtain, we are now in discussions in how to use these tools in order to improve data availability for development. The unit responsible for the 2030 agenda, the UN Relations and Partnerships, is a newly created unit. Started functioning by the beginning of this year, which is the first year of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Many of the team had been already involved in the preparation of that agenda anyway, when it was called post-MDGs, post-2015 agenda, and we're in discussions with the open working group, with the teams working on the finance for development in preparation for Addis. So we have many of the team already with great background and involvement in the ideas related to the 2030 agenda, and as well on the acceleration of the MDGs in the last 1,000 days of the MDGs era. So we have three basic functions. One is an internal function within the World Bank Group, which is a very big and huge organization, as you know. So issues related to coordination between the different global practices, between the different regions involved in the implementation. Our knowledge teams, including research, requires lots of dissemination of information and internal coordination in order to maintain the focus on the delivery and to make sure that what we promised during the last 2-3 years in the preparation period of the SDGs is going to be implemented, and bringing that global agenda to the country implementation level. So this is our first assignment. The second assignment is the continuous and daily updates that we have and engagements with the UN system at large, and my team is based in Washington, D.C., but with offices in New York and Geneva as well, where the main headquarters of the UN and its agencies and programs are located. The third is related to the partnerships with all of the possible stakeholders and partners who are going to be engaged in the implementation of the SDGs or the 2030 agenda, including the private sector and many of the foundations concerned with the priorities of the implementation. We are a small team, but we are working with the support of everybody in the institution. In terms of the internal changes, we're very lucky at the World Bank Group, because during the last couple of years, we have been very much involved in different aspects of reforms and restructuring and modernization of the World Bank Group to be fit for the purposes of meeting development challenges of the 21st century. And as part of that, there are the global practices who are now in the existence, and almost all of those practices are corresponding to different goals and targets of the SDGs. And as we have shown to our governors and the ministers during the annual meetings in Lima, which took place in October 2015, that the twin goals, fighting poverty and achieving shared prosperity within sustainability framework, is very much aligned with the 2030 agenda. So the bank doesn't need really to go beyond its mandate or to stretch further muscles in order to get the 2030 agenda implemented. But it's a very important reminder for ourselves and everybody working with us. While we are very much a global development institution, a hub of knowledge of development, working as an international financial institution with governments and the private sector, but our model is very much country-based. So while we have all of these kind of capacities and resources, it's very much the issue whether the demand coming from the country is enabling us to deliver on these methods. We are ready to engage in the implementation of our twin goals, and as I said, fully aligned with the 2030 agenda, but it takes really the demand from the country's governments and private sector to get us engaged in the implementation and leveraging their resources.